It was the afternoon before Thanksgiving, November 24th, 1971. Airports across the United States were crowded with families heading home, business travelers finishing their last trips of the year, and airline employees moving through routines that felt ordinary, predictable, safe. Commercial aviation was still a symbol of trust. Security was minimal. Passengers walked to the gate without metal detectors, without ID checks, without suspicion. On that day, a man carrying a briefcase purchased a one-way ticket at Portland International Airport. The destination was Seattle. The airline was Northwest Orient. The seat assignment was 18C. His name, according to the ticket, was Dan Cooper. No one noticed anything unusual about him. He was described later as calm, polite, unremarkable, middle-aged, wearing a dark suit, a white shirt, a black tie. The kind of man who blended perfectly into the background of an airport terminal. The kind of man you forget moments after passing him. And that was exactly the point. Shortly after the Boeing 727 took off, Cooper signaled a flight attendant. When she leaned closer, expecting a routine request for a drink or assistance, he quietly told her something that would change aviation history forever. He was hijacking the plane. Inside his briefcase, he claimed, was a bomb. What followed over the next several hours would become one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. A crime executed with precision, confidence, and a level of foresight that investigators would spend decades trying to understand. Before we go any further, if you're drawn to real stories where the truth slips through the cracks of official explanations, stories filled with mystery, unanswered questions, and shadows that refuse to fade, subscribe to the channel and like this video now. Open case files exist to tell these stories slowly, carefully, and without easy conclusions, because this is not just a story of a hijacking. This is the story of a man who vanished into the sky and took his secrets with him. Cooper handed the flight attendant a note. At first, she didn't read it. Notes from passengers weren't unusual, but when he calmly insisted, she opened it and saw the words that made her heart stop. A clear warning, a demand. No shouting, no panic, just quiet certainty. He asked for $200,000 in cash, 2 parachutes, and a field truck waiting in Seattle. There was no hysteria on the plane, no chaos. Passengers remained unaware that anything was wrong. Cooper sat calmly, even ordering a bourbon and soda. Witnesses later recalled that he tipped the flight attendant and spoke with courtesy as if he were following a script written long before that day. The plane landed in Seattle. Authorities complied with his demands. The money was delivered. The parachutes were brought aboard. Passengers were released safely. And then something strange happened. Cooper didn't leave. Instead, he ordered the pilots back into the air. He gave them specific instructions: altitude, speed, landing gear position. He knew details that suggested experience. Military, aviation background, paratrooper training? No one could say for certain, but it was clear this was not improvisation. Somewhere over the dark, rain-soaked wilderness of the Pacific Northwest, Cooper did the unthinkable. He opened the rear stairway of the aircraft mid-flight, and he jumped. No one saw him land. No one heard a parachute. No body was ever found. And just like that, Dan Cooper disappeared. The FBI launched one of the longest and most expensive manhunts in its history. Hundreds of suspects were investigated. Thousands of tips poured in. Entire forests were searched. Rivers were dredged. Years passed. Decades followed. Nothing. No trace of Cooper. No confirmed identity. No conclusive evidence of whether he survived or died. Only questions. Was he a criminal mastermind who executed the perfect escape? Or was this a desperate man who miscalculated and vanished into the wilderness forever? Did he die on impact, lost to the trees and rivers? Or did he walk away, blending back into society under a different name, carrying one of the most audacious secrets ever pulled off in plain sight? And then there are the theories. Some believe Cooper was a former CIA operative, using Cold War-era training to exploit weaknesses in civilian aviation. Others argue he was a disgruntled airline employee, familiar with the aircraft's design. There are theories tying him to military bases, classified experiments, even intelligence failures quietly buried by the government. In 1980, nearly a decade after the hijacking, a child found something strange along the Columbia River: deteriorating bundles of cash buried in the sand. The serial numbers matched Cooper's ransom money. But that discovery raised even more questions than it answered. Why was only a small portion found? How did it get there? Was it planted, lost, or a silent clue left behind? Intentionally? Officially, the FBI closed the case in 2016. Unofficially, the mystery never ended, because no other hijacker has ever succeeded like this. No other criminal has vanished so completely after committing a crime so public, so bold, so meticulously planned. Cooper didn't just steal money. He exposed vulnerabilities, he embarrassed institutions, and he challenged the assumption that every mystery can eventually be solved. More than 50 years later, his name still echoes through aviation history, conspiracy forums, classified documents, and late-night conversations. Not because we know what happened, but because we don't. This story isn't about a jump from an airplane. It's about the thin line between control and chaos, about how one man exploited trust, routine, and human assumptions, and stepped into legend. And as we move deeper into this case, one question becomes impossible to ignore. Was D.B. Cooper a man who disappeared, or a man who was never meant to be found at all? Years passed, then decades. Investigators retired, files gathered dust, witnesses aged, some died. Others recanted details they once swore were certain. Memory, like evidence, began to erode, but the name never disappeared. D.B. Cooper remained. In the absence of answers, the theories grew louder. Some investigators became convinced Cooper never survived the jump. They point to the weather that night. Freezing temperatures, heavy rain, violent winds. The terrain below was unforgiving. Dense forests, steep ravines, fast-moving rivers. No confirmed parachute training, no protective gear, no clear escape route. To them, the case isn't a mystery of disappearance, but of loss. A man who overestimated his own abilities and paid for it with his life, swallowed by wilderness that keeps its secrets well. But that theory has a problem. No body, no parachute, no remains, not even fragments. Thousands of square miles were searched, yet nothing surfaced. Not then, not later. For a jump so reckless, the silence feels incomplete. Other investigators believe the opposite. They argue Cooper knew exactly what he was doing, that he chose the Boeing 727 because it was one of the few commercial aircraft capable of lowering a rear stairway mid-flight, that he selected parachutes deliberately, that he controlled the crew calmly, confidently, without panic. They believe he survived. Some go further. Much further. They believe Cooper didn't just escape, they believe he planned to disappear. Several suspects emerged over the years. Men with military backgrounds, men with knowledge of aircraft systems, men who vanished from their own lives shortly after 1971. Some confessed on their deathbeds. Others were accused by family members who noticed strange money, strange behaviors, strange silences. Every suspect fit part of the puzzle. None fit all of it. Fingerprints were inconclusive, DNA samples degraded, eyewitness descriptions conflicted. The face of D.B. Cooper became a blur, reconstructed sketches layered over memory and imagination. And then there's the money. The cash found along the Columbia River remains one of the most haunting details of the case, not because it proves Cooper survived, but because it proves something else entirely. The money moved. It didn't fall straight down from the sky. It didn't land neatly where investigators searched. It ended up buried, scattered, altered by time and water. How? Some believe the money washed downstream from Cooper's landing site. Others believe it was deliberately buried, either by Cooper himself or by someone who found it and stayed silent. A few even suggest it was placed there years later, as a message or a distraction. The truth is, no explanation fully satisfies the evidence, and that's the pattern. Every answer opens another hole. In 2016, the FBI quietly closed the case. Officially, resources were being redirected. Unofficially, it was an admission of defeat. After 45 years, the trail had gone cold. Not because the mystery was solved, but because it refused to be. Yet, closing a file doesn't erase a legend. Today, D.B. Cooper exists in a strange space between criminal and folk myth. Some see him as a thief who endangered lives. Others see him as a symbol of rebellion against systems that once felt untouchable. His image appears in movies, books, songs. His name is spoken with curiosity, not with fear. But somewhere beneath the myth is a human being. A man who boarded a plane with a plan. A man who trusted the darkness. A man who stepped into the unknown and was never seen again. What makes this case endure is not the money or the jump or the hijacking itself. It's the absence. No conclusion, no confession, no grave, no certainty. In a world obsessed with resolution, D.B. Cooper offers none. And maybe that's why the case still matters, because it challenges the idea that every mystery can be solved, that every story has an ending, that every person leaves a trace behind. Some don't. Some vanish so completely that all we're left with are questions and the uncomfortable realization that systems can fail, memories can lie, and truth doesn't always surface. If stories like this still fascinate us, it's because they force us to confront the limits of knowledge itself. So, subscribe to Open Case Files, like this video, and stay with us for the next episode, because there are still files left unopened, stories left unresolved, and truths still hiding in plain sight. And now, the question that remains isn't about money or parachutes or hijackings. It's this: did D.B. Cooper die in the wilderness that night, or did he live the rest of his life knowing he committed the perfect crime? And if he did survive, what name did he answer to when no one was looking?